Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /PettyRevenge, where people get little wins on others, and the stories are so satisfying. And in today's episode, entitled Karens are getting embarrassed, nasty neighbors are getting taught lessons, horrible co-workers are getting furious, and one OP tells a story about the time they embarrassed a lazy Karen boss in front of the whole company, and it just gets worse. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's lineup. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I'm a bridal stylist. I help people find their wedding gown, and I love my job. And 99% of the time, it's a happy, wonderful job with great coworkers and customers. And then there's the 1%. I had a bride today who was very sweet, but she just didn't connect with any of the gowns we had. Which is okay, it happens sometimes. She was fine, but her mom, and somehow it's always the mom or the aunt, was decidedly not happy, and she decided to crap talk me in Spanish the whole time. She would say things like, "Does this woman know what she's doing? She's pulling nothing but the ugly gowns. And I hope you don't ever get as big as her. She's basically a walking cow." So on and so on. Absolutely lovely. Now, another thing about me is I'm whiter than a jar of mayo, and I don't necessarily look like I speak Spanish. However, my parents are from a Spanish-speaking country, even though they're not Hispanic. I knew a lot more as a kid, but I still know enough to get around. So I waited until the end, and as they're leaving, I said, "I hope you have a great day. Please feel free to come back anytime you'd like. We have lots more gowns, and I'll make sure a cow isn't assisting you next time." I said that in Spanish to the bride and her mom, and oh man. You know that good feeling when you're in a ton of pain and the doctor gives you something that works, and you're suddenly not feeling any pain anymore? Or when you've held in your pee for so long that your bladder's about to explode and you finally make it to the toilet? Yeah, seeing the look on that bride's mom's face when she realized I heard and understood the entire hour of her ripping me to shreds was so much better. And this is why you should never talk bad about anyone in any language, because you never know who's got that Duolingo going on. But yeah, OP's response was perfect, and guys, I would have paid good money to see the look on that Karen's face when she realized she messed up big time. Like an hour of OP biting their tongue only to drop that bomb on her. And this person shares a similar comment about the time their waitress messed up. So technically, this belongs to my husband, but I was there to witness the fun. My husband is Chinese, but he was born in America, and he speaks perfect fluent English without an accent. He's basically just a regular guy. Last weekend, we were at a new restaurant that opened up, and after we sat down, this Karen waitress brings us our menus. She then said, in that condescending way that some people speak to non-English speakers, "Do you need anything?" Now, my husband initially looked pissed, but then something sparkles in his eye. He turns to the waitress and he very loudly says, in a very exaggerated Asian accent, "Help with menu. Me no read." He then held the waitress captive for about 10 minutes, having her explain the whole menu to him dish by dish, and occasionally having her repeat things very slowly. I was trying my hardest not to laugh, so I excused myself to the bathroom. When I got back, my husband then looked at me, and he said very loudly, with no accent or anything, "Honey, I don't think I want to eat anything on this menu. Do you? Maybe we should go find somewhere else to eat." And seriously, the look on the waitress's face was priceless when we just grabbed our stuff and walked out of the restaurant. We went somewhere else to eat. So in the early 90s, we bought a new house on a lot that was recently severed and sold from the neighbor's property. It was a large corner lot divided into two parcels. The back parcel was intended as a second driveway to connect the side road to the neighbors, but that was mistakenly sold to us. Our neighbor, a known grumpy old guy, insisted that this back parcel was his property, and it was never intended to be sold. He and his lawyer had messed up. He would often stand there right in front of our bedroom windows to kind of mark his property, and trying to have a reasonable conversation with him was impossible. I repeatedly told him that I had the deed and that the property line wasn't going to change. His wife was rarely seen as she had limited mobility issues, and she spent most of her time watching TV, connected to a C-band satellite dish. At the time, I was working in wireless and I had access to test equipment. To find a way to keep the neighbor occupied and hopefully give us some peace, I decided to generate interference that would jam his satellite signal. I set it up on a timer so that their signal would cut out 10 minutes before the hour and come back 10 minutes after, meaning they would consistently miss the beginnings and the ends of their TV programs. This definitely kept him busy trying to figure out what was wrong. The guy even called out technicians, but of course, the issue never occurred when they were there. I could often hear his frustrated outbursts, and I imagined his wife was adding to the pressure. So after a few weeks of this, I just walk over to him while he's fiddling with the dish, and I casually mention that I worked in wireless, and I had some knowledge of satellite communications, and maybe I could have a look. Hearing me say that, he was immediately interested, so I climb up the ladder, pretend to adjust something, and gave him some technical sounding nonsense about what I'd found, and then told him it was fixed. I then stopped the interference coming from my house. A few days later, the guy comes over to thank me profusely, saying I had fixed it when no one else could. From that day forward, he was the friendliest neighbor, and the guy never mentioned the contested piece of land ever again. In my opinion, that was well frickin' played. And seriously, jamming the signal at the beginning and ending of shows is diabolical. Like, this is honestly the type of petty revenge that I personally love, where no one gets hurt, a Karen neighbor turns nice in the end, and they might have even become friends. Talk about turning sour lemons into a delicious lemon pie. And this next post, guys, oh boy, OP goes the savage route to ruin a nasty neighbor's fun, and they don't become friends. Listen to this one. My next door neighbor is literally a walking red flag. The guy brings home a new girl every few nights. You'd think he was running a promo code for Tinder or something. Now, it probably wouldn't have bothered me if he were quiet about it, but no. Every visit turns into a live show that the neighbors are to listen to. Slamming headboard, mattress squeaking, theatrical moaning, him yelling stuff. Oh my goodness. It's loud, it's late, it's beyond irritating. Now, I thought maybe it was a one-time thing, since the guy only moved in recently. But no, it's his lifestyle. The man treats his apartment like a free-use room at a shady hotel. And every time someone new shows up, I watch my sleep walk out the door. I did confront him nicely once. I said, "Hey, walls are thin. Could you maybe keep it down?" And the guy just smirked and said, "Jealous much? I could make room." It was at that point I thought, cool, game on. I printed a fake notice that said, "Notice, this unit is under pest control monitoring for possible bedbug activity. Visitors not advised to sit on furniture or bedding until further notice. Signed, Property Management." I made it look serious, and then I taped it right on his door, bold and conspicuous. Plus, I was sure he'd bring home a girl since it was Friday night. And I was right, he brings a girl home. She stops right at the sign, and she says, whoa, wait, bed bugs? He then says, "What? No, that's nothing, ignore it, that's a prank or something." To which she responds, "Nope, I'm not doing this." She left quickly, and I laughed. But apparently, the guy didn't learn his lesson because a few nights later, he brings another girl home, loud as ever. So after that, I got a friend involved. My friend lives for chaos, and she has acting skills to match. The next weekend, we waited until he brings another date home. We gave it a few minutes, and then my friend marches up to his door, and she starts banging like the building was on fire. The guy opens it, confused, and she just bursts in, and she starts screaming in his face, "Are you effing serious? You didn't tell me you had HIV? I tested positive. You ruined my life." The girl inside was gone in 30 seconds, jacketless, full sprint, didn't say a word to him. The whole thing was pure gold, and the dude never looked more confused. He hasn't brought anyone back since. So this happened years ago when the pandemic was going on. Mid-pandemic, my boss disappeared. Just as we were gearing up for our most challenging, time-intensive project in the last 5 years, the guy dropped off the face of the earth. We kept working for a week or so without him because everything was virtual, and virtual work was still new, so we really didn't need him. We were delegating tasks ourselves and completing things on our own. We spoke to coworkers maybe twice a week, but some decisions were beyond our discretion, so we couldn't move forward on those aspects of the project until we received a response from him. After about 7 to 10 total days of silence, we called the boss's boss, who informed our team that our boss was so sick he wasn't able to work right now. We took that at face value, of course, and we sent him letters of well wishes, and we didn't bother him with work stuff or ask why he was able to notify his boss but not us. At this point, 3 weeks go by and still not a word. We're beginning to discuss amongst ourselves whether or not he maybe died. We're terrified and horrified and so concerned. We're even contemplating calling his extended family. We're sending flowers and care packages to his apartment. Meanwhile, the projects descended into chaos because no leader was appointed in our boss's place. So we're forced to navigate several layers of bureaucracy in order to accomplish anything at all, whereas in the past, he would have just signed off in real time. Around week 4 or 5, one of our coworkers suggests that he's not even ill at all, but instead, he's using it as an excuse to take time off. We all jump over our coworker, asking how he could insinuate something like that, and lamenting about what a tragedy our boss is probably living through. People were chilly to him for days after that. On week 7, we're undertaking a letter-writing campaign to upper management, demanding an acting boss be appointed while ours is recovering. The project is a month behind schedule. We're all working overtime every day, sometimes even on weekends, without extra compensation, just to keep up with the mess of the boss's sudden absence. On week number 8, he finally reappears. He logs into a morning meeting as though nothing had happened. He looks well-rested, well-fed, and the guy even has a tan. Not at all like someone who just came out of the other side of a 6-week respiratory virus. He then says something quickly to the effect of, "Yeah, that was brutal, but I'm glad to be better and glad to be back. Let's get to work." He doesn't even want to talk about what happened or answer any of our questions, like were you in the hospital, what was it like, etc. Fast forward to about 4 or 5 months after this. My sister sends me a promo for a fairly new reality TV show. I'd never heard of it, but it's on a major platform. And she says, "Hey, isn't this guy a friend of yours or something? I swear, I've seen him and you together before." So I watched the trailer for the show, and lo and behold, there's my boss, participating as a contestant on a reality TV show. It didn't take long for me to put the pieces together and realize that he took extended leave to go on TV, that he knew he wouldn't get otherwise during this massive project. And he lied about it under the guise of a vicious disease. So I sit down and stew with this information, unsure of how to handle it. I know confronting him won't get me very far, but I can't just do nothing, right? Also, I'm not close enough with any of my colleagues to discuss this with them, and trust that they wouldn't just run off and send an all-company email about it. So I slept on it a few nights, and then the opportunity falls right into my lap. I got an email from corporate, encouraging teams that are still working remotely to plan virtual social functions, to keep the work culture going and to stay in touch. Among the suggestions were game night, trivia, and a watch party. With the premiere of the show only a couple of weeks away, I got busy telling everyone how I'd been meaning to get into this show, how it's so enticing and exciting, basically laying the groundwork to guilt them into coming into an impromptu virtual watch party off hours. I even offered to get special shirts made up and send them to each person's house. Whatever I had to do to get the attention of corporate. finally, I sent an invite to all of my boss's bosses and any other members of corporate that I could justify inviting without making a total ass of myself. And because this is entirely virtual, my boss is unable to overhear any of the chatter. He doesn't realize that I'm hyping up this show, and he doesn't realize that I've planned a watch party for it. I wasn't inviting him unless he had the balls to explicitly ask about it. I was hoping he wouldn't have heard about it at all, not until afterwards. That was really the only way this could work. So the night comes and I'm screen sharing the show to a whopping 64 people, a huge chunk of my department. Many members of corporate had showed up because I was the only person stupid enough to buy into their virtual social work party scheme, so they felt pressured to support it. I was holding my breath, hoping this would go my way. I was bracing myself for some kind of curveball, but there wasn't even that dramatic of a build-up. Right at the outset, they introduced the premise, and then gave a brief overview of each contestant, which included the contestants being in an exotic location. As my boss was introduced, right down to what he did for work, I could see people register delight and surprise, and then go blank, just before sliding into confusion and rage. The chat took a drastic turn from "oh my goodness" and all sorts of jokes to a brave member of my team sending the message saying, "Wait, when was this filmed?" My audience dropped from 64 to 58 to mid-30s, and by the time the episode was over, it was just me and the other 15 core members of the team. One asked if I'd already known, but some members of the team are very close to the boss. So all I said was, "Well, I definitely do now," and then wrapped up the call pretty quickly after that. Perhaps one of the best bonuses is that you could already tell from episode 1 that the character arc the show assigned to our boss was bumbling idiot. He had his true colors on in full display, and some production massaging up them to the 11th degree. My boss was fired, and my good buddy was promoted to his place. I'm an office legend now, and it was all so satisfying that it was almost worth the dozens and dozens of hours of uncompensated overtime that led to it. Listen, I don't know if a crappy, lazy boss getting fired is worth the dozens and dozens of hours of uncomped overtime, but to each their own. And seriously, how he didn't know that he was gonna be outed sooner or later since the show's airing on TV is beyond me, guys, but who knows? Judging by the bumbling idiot character arc he was assigned, he might have had a huge ego that followed and thought, well, you know what, who needs a job once I'm rich and famous from this show? Little did he know, right? So many years ago, I used to work nights, and I shared a cubicle workspace with someone who worked days. We'll call her Karen. Now, Karen apparently thought the entire cubicle belonged to her, and no one was allowed to sit there. Everything was labeled with her name, and she would lock the desk. I even had to get a separate filing cabinet so I could store my files and stuff, as she wasn't willing to share. The woman had little knickknacks all over the desk in inconvenient areas that made it difficult to work, so I would simply move them to the monitor stand out of the way. I'm short and she's tall, so I'd adjust the seat, the monitor, and the phone just to be comfortable, as I hated feeling like a kid with my feet dangling. Fast forward a few weeks of doing this routine of moving the figures and adjusting the workspace, I come in and there's a giant piece of paper taped to the monitor with an aggressive note saying, "Night person, do not move my stuff. It's not yours to touch, and stop adjusting the seat and monitor because it's not ergonomically correct. Blah blah blah. Again, stop touching my things." I just showed my manager the letter and how the desk was when I came in, and again after adjusting it to my needs. My manager just laughed and basically said she's crazy to continue to adjust it to better suit your needs, and she can do the same when she comes in. So cue the petty revenge. I start moving everything into random configurations daily for a couple of weeks. I would stack everything up like a pyramid, unplug the phone from the base, put the mouse in its place, left the seat upside down, anything I thought I could do to annoy her. Each day became a new layout in that cubicle. My friend, who worked 2 cubicles over, said that Karen would stomp past her every day to complain to the manager about the night person, who is on purpose destroying her stuff and making it difficult to work. However, she conveniently left out the fact that she left a nasty note starting this whole petty revenge. After about a week of her complaining, the manager asked if anything was missing or broken, and she said, well, no, but... So being tired of her constant complaining, the manager cuts her off and said to simply just readjust to her needs and only come to them if anything was vandalized. It was fun to hear from my friend how hot and bothered she was, not knowing what she would find each morning. I never saw another note from her, but a year later, she was voluntold to move to nights. One night during break, she was telling a few of us about the situation, how there was some stupid night person who was on purpose messing with her. Of course, she was playing the victim, and she asked if we had any idea who it could have been. The cubicle now sat empty because I'd been promoted and I no longer sat at her desk by this time. I guess she expected that person, me, to get thrown under the bus because the day crew was cutthroat. Little did she know, the night crew was ride or die. We all played dumb and we started laughing the second she walked outside. So yeah, no, the cubicle does not belong to you. Others are allowed to use it and adjust items accordingly, you entitled Karen. Yeah, I can only imagine the rage Karen felt when she came in every single morning and everything was always out of place and rearranged. But hey, this is what she gets, right? Leave a nasty note like that and who wouldn't do the same to you? And while we're on the topic of annoying cubicle workers, this person comments, I worked in a cubicle farm and there were 4 rows of 4 cubicles. There was one annoying coworker who never used the handset on his phone. Every single call he made or received was made using the speaker. He also tended to shout into it, even though it wasn't necessary to raise his voice to be picked up by the microphone. There had been a few complaints from some of us to him, but he ignored them. One Monday morning, he called a doctor's office to report that he was having urinary troubles. The guy made an appointment for the next morning at 9 a.m. He then called our boss to say that he'd be coming in late tomorrow. All of this was broadcasted via his speaker and his loud voice. So I talked my wife into calling his extension the next morning while he was at the doctor's office. I told her to leave a message using a script I wrote out for her, and she did. She left a message on his voicemail after blocking her caller ID. When the guy arrived at the office after the doctor's appointment, he starts listening to his voicemail messages on speaker. The first one was work-related, but the second one was the one my wife left for him. It said something like this. It said, Mr. Smith, this is Jane from Dr. Smith's office. We need for you to come back here, today if possible. You were supposed to give us a urine sample, not a semen sample. Please call us back immediately. He quickly punched the end call button, but it was way too late. The whole cubicle farm just erupted in laughter. The guy knew it had to be one of us, but he didn't recognize the voice, and he never used the speakerphone ever again. I'm an overnight cashier at a gas station, and it's pretty chill most nights. There's a few bad apples and entitled Karens as always, but nothing too bad. Every now and then, I'll get an entitled customer that demands I sell them beer without an ID, which is against state law. I wouldn't dream of it. Or to sell them cigarettes despite being 20. Sorry kids, not happening. This one lady though, she really got under my skin. This happened a while back. So the woman comes in around 11:30, so it's past the time we shut down the lottery. We turn off the machine at 10 o'clock as per store regulations. There's a ton of updates that the machine undergoes nightly, and it takes 6 to 7 hours. I keep an eye on her, and I notice that she has one of the ball draw style lotto cards in her hands. So I call out and I explain that the machine is off for the night, so I can't sell her the tickets. The woman then scoffs loudly and she says I'm lying. I just don't want to do my job. So I reiterate that the machine's undergoing maintenance, so she'll have to return at 5 a.m. when the machine's ready for service. She then throws the ticket on the ground and she stomps to the beer. Now, I'm already annoyed, and in my head, I know I'll make sure my coworker takes care of her next time. I don't want to deal with this drama. So the woman comes back to the counter with beer cans in tow, and she slams them on the counter. I grab one to scan and then ask for ID. The lady once again scoffs, and she asks if that's really necessary to look at her face. She has wrinkles older than me. I explain that it's store policy and state law to see ID for alcohol purchases. We go back and forth for 5 minutes. It only ends when I tell her that she can either give me the ID so I can do my job, or she can leave beerless and lottoless. The woman then passes me her ID, face bright red, and the lady just starts going off at this point, saying I need to lose my job, how my manager, whom she called by name, would be so upset to hear how I'm treating a regular. I just write my name, my manager's free time for the next day, and I tell her she's free to come in and complain about me doing my job. It'll go absolutely great for her. At that point, she snatches the paper and she starts asking me to sell her cigarettes. At this point, I tell her I'm not selling her anything else, because she's made me uncomfortable and I have the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason. She then leaves screaming that she's gonna come back and kick my ass. I decide to leave a long text message to my managers in the group chat explaining what happened, along with a description of her. A couple of hours later, some of my regulars come in for their nightly coffees. 2 are local sheriffs. I give them the rundown of what transpired, and one of them promises to swing through a few times for a few nights to make sure she's not causing trouble. And here's where I get petty. The woman had parked at the front of the store, which means I had perfect view of her license plate. So I took note and waited. The woman shows up 2 nights later and she parks by the dumpster. She's standing on the sidewalk for 2 hours waiting for me to come outside. About an hour in, I call the tow service our store uses. I say there's a broken down car in the parking lot in prime parking position, as per rules. The cops come through, as they always do for coffee, and they ask me if she's the customer harassing me. I confirm it, so they go out and talk to her. At this point, the tow truck pulls in. The lady starts walking away from the cops to talk to the driver, confused and pissed. I didn't get to hear much of the encounter, but I did watch as she got arrested, put into the back of the cop car, and then they waited for the tow truck to finish hauling off her car before leaving. I have no idea what happened to her. The woman never came back in, and I didn't get in trouble with management. What a glorious petty revenge that was, and what a psycho Karen, guys. I'm just glad she was arrested in the end. Like, we all hear of people making threats to come back and kick someone's butt, but rarely do you ever see them coming back, and what a mistake that was. And listen, I've said this so many times, I have so much respect for people who work jobs like this, who on a regular have to deal with psycho people like this, especially working the night shifts where it can get super sketchy. You know what they say, revenge is a dish best served cold, and in this case, best served arrested and towed. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/petty revenge. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode where people are absolutely destroying their bosses' lives. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.